Hello fellow mutants, welcome back to another video, and this video, George Lucas predicted we're going to talk about how the Screen Rant article is saying that George Lucas predicted Disney's Star Wars strategy almost 20 years ago. Which is interesting, so George Lucas must be a Jedi. So, let's see what they mean by him predicting Disney's move 20 years ago. Disney's Star Wars strategy had only changed in the last few years, where George Lucas predicted it almost 20 years ago. After purchasing the franchise in 2012, which is 11 years ago, Disney's initial approach seemed to distance themselves from Lucas, announcing a sequel trilogy he had long claimed would never happen. In addition to rejecting Lucas's story treatments, Disney sought to recapture the original Star Wars trilogy, marketing a return to practical effects over Lucas' CGI-heavy prequel trilogy. Which I have to say, regardless of how you feel about the sequel trilogy, I do appreciate them trying to go for the more practical effect over the heavy CGI, because I feel like that's part of what made Star Wars just so special in the first place. That said, let's continue. Disney also announced a series of standalone movies, planning a Star Wars theatrical release every year for the foreseeable future. 10 years later, Disney's strategy has changed and significantly, shifting an approach that mirrors Lucas' vision from Star Wars. Star Wars prequel trilogy, Hate disappeared. The new movies were met with mixed reception, and Disney decided to slow down on releasing new Star Wars films. Disney had made several changes and left their mark on the Star Wars franchise, but the time had come to evaluate their progress and reconsider how to proceed. This led to a massive change to Disney Star Wars in 2019, reflecting strategy from 2005. So George Lucas believed television was the future of Star Wars. Before Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith hit theaters, Lucas and his team were already charting the future of Star Wars on the small screen. Lucas revealed two planned Star Wars TV shows, a 3D animated series called Star Wars Clone Wars, and a live-action series called Star Wars Underworld. The latter was eventually cancelled due to the budget constraints, but the Clone Wars ran for 6 seasons before being cancelled by Disney. Lucas wasn't interested in creating more Star Wars movies, but knew the television was the best route to continue expanding the franchise. Although Lucas eventually changed his mind, he was adamant for a long time that the story of Star Wars ended with Return of the Jedi. He believed that the Star Wars saga was about the rise and fall of Anakin Skywalker. So once he was redeemed, there was no need for more episodic films. Lucas did have plans for a sequel trilogy before selling Lucasfilm, but Disney later decided not to use his treatments, which was a poor move on their part, in my humble opinion. They returned to Star Wars to the film-centric approach, releasing movies every year that harnessed the style of the classic Star Wars. Force Awakens was pretty decent, even though it was a carbon copy of the New Hope. Rogue One was basically the best Star Wars film under Disney. The rest was this approach had mixed results, but Disney found success in another area. The Mandalorian success proved Lucas was right. Shortly before Star Wars The Rise of Skywalker hit theaters, Disney began their own transition to the small screen with The Mandalorian, the first live-action Star Wars TV show. Disney had already released 2 animated series, but The Mandalorian demonstrated a commitment to the Star Wars TV show with a bigger budget that felt cinematic. This had been Lucasfilm for Underworld, but he and his team couldn't produce a high-quality live-action series at a reasonable budget. The Mandalorian was a success upon release, praised for its new characters and outstanding visuals, proving Lucas right about Star Wars potential on TV. With The Mandalorian under the way and the sequel trilogy over, Disney began shifting their focus away from movies to create more TV shows. Book of Boba continued the Bounty Hunter story from The Mandalorian Season 2, Obi-Wan Kenobi movie became a TV show, and Andor explored Cassian Andor's story before Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Disney corrected one of their biggest mistakes by bringing the Clone Wars back for a 7th season, releasing 4 more animated shows over the next few years. More Star Wars shows are scheduled to be released with seemingly no end in sight. And I think nobody's complaining about, like, as long as the shows are made out of good quality, I don't think anyone would be opposed to more Star Wars shows. I'm hoping the Ahsoka show, which I'm recording this before the first 2 episodes airs, is a banger. I hope the series is a banger. I want nothing more than as a lifelong Star Wars fan to say, you know what, Ahsoka is the best Star Wars show. It's really good. Because Rogue One is the best Star Wars show, in my opinion, that's live action. Ahsoka's my favorite Force Clone Wars hero, right? And she's amongst my favorite Force sensitives. She's about 2nd place for me. 1st place being Luke. So I want nothing more as an Ahsoka fan for the Ahsoka series to be good. Despite me thinking that she should have died in her duel with Vader, I want nothing more than that Ahsoka show to be knocking it out of the park. So yeah, it would bring me nothing but joy as a person who's a genuine Ahsoka fan, despite me thinking that she should have died in her duel with Vader, to have the Ahsoka show be amongst the best parts of Disney Star Wars. Anyways, continuing. Have Disney and Lucasfilm learned their lesson with Star Wars movies? Isn't that the question of the day? Star Wars will return to the big screen in 2026, and only time will tell if Disney and Lucasfilm have learned from their previous movies. Disney Star Wars has had mixed results, with the sequel trilogy defying fans and Solo Star Wars story bombing at the box office. In an era where Star Wars' biggest threat is the budget, Lucas' desire to find more cost-effective ways to make movies is more relevant than ever. Disney initially seemed to follow his example with The Mandalorian, utilizing groundbreaking technology and kicking off an era of new shows. But now they are returning to Star Wars movies. Even so, it's clear that Disney is taking a different approach this time. The upcoming Star Wars movies will be standalones rather than another trilogy of films. And there will be 2 years release gap. Lucas himself had considered standalone Star Wars movies, and the Mandalorian movie will be connected to the live action shows, similar to Lucas releasing the Clone Wars movie in theaters. Most importantly, Lucasfilm will have plenty of time to develop each film before releasing them in theaters. Until then, Disney will continue their Star Wars strategy that George Lucas predicted almost 20 years ago. So has Lucasfilm learned their lesson in terms of the movies? I hope so. I certainly hope so. Because say what you will about even the prequel trilogy, George Lucas had a plan. He had an overarching plan of the original trilogy, I feel like, and the prequels. Of course, he kind of changed a few things here and there along the way, but he had an overarching plan. The rebellion, original trilogy, the rebellion fighting the Empire. Somehow, the Empire was going to get their ass handed to them, right? The prequels, how Anakin became a Jedi, how he was like a Jedi, and how Anakin fell to the dark side to become Darth Vader. Now, I kind of went into more detail with the prequels than the original trilogies in terms of an overall synopsis of the trilogies, but still, my point is, for the two respective trilogies, George Lucas had a plan. And I feel like, even though it's a series, I feel like Dave Filoni essentially had a plan for an overarching plan for Ahsoka. And I feel like if that plan could have and should have concluded in Rebels, because I know George Lucas was in a Ahsoka dies camp, Filoni's Ahsoka lives camp, and in terms of the Clone Wars, I'm in the Ahsoka lives camp. But in terms of Star Wars Rebels, I'm in the Ahsoka dies camp. But we'll see what Filoni has in plan for Ahsoka. I think Ahsoka should have died in Rebels Season 2. In her duel with Vader. My worry is that he might love the character too much, where he might let her live a bit too long, or be too involved in Star Wars. But in terms of Ahsoka, the only thing I have to say that I really questioned his decision making is letting her live past her duel with Vader. But for the most part, George Lucas hasn't disappointed. I mean, not George Lucas. Dave Filoni, in terms of what he brought to the table, for the most part, hasn't disappointed me. And he's literally the only reason why I am going to remotely be open watching the Ahsoka show. Because for the most part, he hasn't disappointed me. So with that said, what do you guys think about this article? Let me know in the comment section down below. Love you guys. Have a wonderful day. Be kind to one another. And may the Force be with us all. As if I can end this video.